Hey everyone, this is FLC. So I wanted to make a video about patch 2.7 because as far as I'm concerned, this patch has done more for the game than pretty much every other patch combined. But there are a lot of misconceptions in the community about what it's done, and I'd like to address some of them, just because I think it's a bit sad that the community isn't really taking advantage of the patch in the way it could. So yeah, let's get to it. Just before I start though, I want to make it clear that I'm not going to go into every single change. A bunch of them don't matter. So for example, the NZAP change, /magic change, they don't matter at all. Some other changes like the ink strike change are kind of nice, but they aren't going to actually change anything important. Like, the ink strike change is good because it means that you can actually use ink strikes in sort of close proximity to a fight, but that's basically it. Like, there's no real analysis behind that. It's just, if people weren't using it before, they aren't going to suddenly start using it because it's slightly easier to move after your ink strike is placed. So, for the most part, I'm going to focus on things like the gal changes, the special changes, etc. Because those are the ones that actually mean a lot to the game. So, I'd like to first start by talking about the 52 gal, which might seem strange because it wasn't changed at all, but the 96 and the Pro changes are relevant in that context. The 52 gal is the first weapon that people started using damage up on, like, a lot. And the reason for that wasn't because of defense up, it was actually because of the damage fall off. Now, for those of you who don't know, when a shot reaches the end of its range, it starts losing damage. Now, if you know how much damage a 52 gal does, i.e. 52, you can imagine how that might become a problem. Because when it starts losing damage, it no longer two-shot kills. So you run a little bit of damage up, so that when your damage starts falling off, you still do about 50 damage instead of about 48. And as a result, there you go. You know, you're getting two-shot kills on most players. If they have defense up, you're going to be three-shotting anyway, just for safety. So it's not a big deal if they have defense up. But at the same time, if they have less defense up than you have damage up, you can get the two-shot kill on them anyway. And it's just a nice little perk in that sense. But by no means was damage up stacking on 52 gals about dealing with defense up. So the reason this is relevant is because the 96 gal now needs to actually worry about damage fall-off. Before, it dealt 62 damage. Like, that was more than enough that damage fall-off wouldn't mean anything. Now, though, that's a different story. You need to run damage up on the 96 in order to make its damage not completely tank. The defense up is... The 96 is the only weapon in the game, at least the only shooter in the game, that I would really worry about defense up with, because it shoots so slowly. But it's nothing to do with defense up. The change is to do with long-range weapons not having to worry about getting two-shot by 96 gals because they happen to be within a range that the 96 gal can connect with them. That's what the change has done. It's nothing to do with defense up. So the Pro's muzzle velocity change, people have quite correctly identified that it's going to make the gun easier to use because you don't have to lead your shots quite so much. But now, not only that, but the damage fall-off does have something to do with that velocity, because essentially when the shots are slowing down, they're slowing down from a higher speed, which means that they slow down like a little bit slower, if that makes sense. With the point being that the Pro still has that massive amount of overkill that gave it a pretty much guaranteed 3-shot kill at pretty much any range it could connect shots at. And now, those shots are easier to connect, and they travel a little bit further. So the Pro is overall buffed even more than it might originally seem. So this is important for two reasons. One, because the Berry Pro has come out with its ridiculous kit, and two, because charges have been changed so that the uncharged shots are no longer quite the same range that they used to be. So that means that longer range weapons have a lot more of a chance of getting in, because they can now actually take advantage of downtimes between sniper shots, and they don't have to worry as much about getting, blindsided because they started shooting at a charger who just sort of did a god flick on them. So that's also very important. I think that the splatter scope is going to probably see a bit more use because of the increased sort of aggressive potential. You can use it as part of an aggressive strat that uses the bomb rush and so on. Without having to worry about like the E-leaders being particularly effective against it, because it also means that other charges can now take advantage of their speed, because the splatter scope gets a longer range shot before the E-leader does, and that's very important now. So that's that's essentially what the charger change does. It makes the other charges very viable, it makes the longer range weapons a lot more interesting, and it means that you no longer have to have a wall in order to engage anyone. So one of the things I particularly like about this patch is that it's changed skill floors in a big way. Instead of being able to, for example, throw 4 burst bombs at your feet to get 10 attacks off you as an E-leader, you now have to actually A, pay attention to where you're positioned, B, place your burst bombs in a way that actually deals the 35 damage, or indeed gets the direct hit, and C, actually manage your ink economy. It's no longer a case of, I'm going to throw 4 burst bombs, then echo, then throw another 4 burst bombs, because now that's actually really inefficient. You can still throw 4 burst bombs very in rapid succession with a good ink recovery build that, you know, you space out your burst bombs, you space out yourself, like you kite the person, throw burst bombs one at a time. Like, that is extremely effective now. That playstyle has had a massive buff, and that's how I always used to use my burst bombs as a new leader. But of course, people sort of went for the easy way out of just throwing 4 burst bombs at their feet to deal with 10 attacks, and as a result, people got lazy with them. And now, because those people are the ones who use burst bombs, they're looking at this as a massive nerf to burst bombs. It's a massive nerf to the way they use burst bombs. That's it. It's not a nerf to burst bombs as a whole. It is a massive buff to them. And I guess, on that note, we come to the special change. This, in my opinion, is the biggest change of the patch. Like, even including the new weapons that have been added. Because what's happened is they have changed specials so that when you die, you lose a certain amount based on the weapon that you're using. So that's either going to be light, where you lose 40%, medium, where you lose 60%, or heavy, where you lose 75%. What they haven't done is update Special Saver to reflect that. So, to put it another way, before the patch, when you die, you lost 50% of your special, and that was it. That was all your loss. And Special Saver would recoup some amount of that loss. Now, there is an extra step to that process, where you die post-patch, you lose 50%, Special Saver refunds some of that, and then your weapon's special depletion either refunds a further 10% if it's light, as you'll see in the Slosher Deco clip here, or it takes a further 10 or 25% if you're medium or heavy. In other words, you still gain the same absolute amount of points from running Special Saver. So, say, 2 mains would save you 60 points of a dropped Kraken, it still saves you 60 points of a dropped Kraken. It's just that with a Slosher Deco, that's 60 out of 80. With a 96 Deco, that's 60 out of 150. So this is important because it means that a lot of weapons that have a very strong tendency to sort of fuck up, for want of a better word, like, the one that comes to mind is a Custom Range Blaster, because the Custom Range Blaster, in my opinion, could actually be the best weapon in the game. But it's only the best weapon in the game if you can hit direct hits with it reliably, and by that I don't mean, you know, occasionally hitting direct hits. I mean actually hitting every single direct hit that comes your way. It's only really good if it can do that. But if it misses that, then it tends to die, and it drops Kraken, and it's not great. Now, though, that's less of a problem. Because now, if it's on point, you get the direct hits. It's very, very strong. It's ridiculous to fight against that thing sometimes. But if you fuck up and miss a direct hit, who cares? You don't lose Kraken, or at least if you didn't have Kraken to begin with, you don't really lose that many points on it. You can stack it quite safely, because the weapon's very gear independent. All you need is a bit of ink resistance and a bit of swim speed, so you know, it's a very, very powerful weapon now, because you don't have to worry about constantly, you know, regenerating special. And as far as I'm concerned, that makes the Custom Range Blaster kind of ridiculous now. The same can also be said of things like the Slosher Deco, the Custom Jet Scorcher, the Zinc Mini, not the Zinc Mini, the regular Mini, because it has the 10 attack kit, but with light depletion. Like, I would even consider running a permanent ink brush in a team composition just because it has really good ink coverage and a really fast Kraken. You know, a really fast Kraken that it doesn't matter if you happen to die with it. You can just use the Kraken when you want because you run Special Saver. And if you die with it, so what? You just recharge it very quickly because it's an ink brush, and you super jump to someone and you land with the Kraken. Like, that is very effective. So, pretty much at this point, I would say that it's while Tenatechs and so on, like the heavy weapons, are still very effective. Like, I would not say that the 96 Skull is going anywhere. The Tenatech certainly isn't. The Lunar Blaster, I hope it does, because it's terrible. And by that I don't mean overpowered, I actually mean it is a bad weapon. But I hope now that this change has been implemented, that people actually sort of consider, should I use a Tenatech, or should I use something else? Because Tenatechs now need to be used by people who can stay alive with said Tenatechs. They can't really be used by people who just play suicidally with them and just go, you know, 15 and 10. Like, that's kind of nice to get 15 kills, but then you're also never getting Zuka, which is quite unfortunate. So, don't get me wrong, these weapons are not going anywhere. These weapons are still very, very powerful. The 96 Skull is not going anywhere, the Tenatech is not going anywhere. The Luna was terrible, but it needed the change so that solo queue would be a bit more reasonable for, like, A ranks and B ranks. So, overall, this patch has done so much for the game, because now, in order to use these weapons that have heavy depletion, you need to actually be good with them. You need to understand the nuance of these weapons. Because now, instead of it being like, you use a Tenatech because every other Zuka weapon is somehow inferior. Because, you know, the Tenatech is going to die less because it's a Tenatech. Like, it's a good weapon. But now, the Tenatech actually needs to die half as much in order to justify its existence. If you're using it for Zuka, that is. The 96 Deco needs to die in half as many situations as the Slosher Deco in order to be worth using over the Slosher Deco. And so on and so forth. That, I think, is a really, really important change that single-handedly makes a whole bunch of weapons actually worth considering. Whereas before, it would just be, which specials do we want? And then you pick which weapon is the best that has that special. And that was how you made a team comp to begin with. And thankfully now, I don't think that's actually a problem anymore. Anyway, I hope this was thought-provoking, or at the very least entertaining. I, again, will be streaming every now and then. Not regularly like I used to, and I will be occasionally making YouTube videos, but I won't be, like, doing much of the strategy stuff anymore. I just don't really have time to put, you know, to script it all and so on. Anyway, that's all from me. Thanks for watching.